Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Welcome to Startup Grind. And at Startup Grind, we usually like to start from the beginning. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and your early life.
All right. Thank you so much, Sandra, firstly, for inviting me over here. And thank you so much to our beautiful guests for coming over today. I really appreciate that you've taken your time to come over here, and I feel also inspired to see that we have a lot of entrepreneurs around here, and this is good for our country. Beginning with, like Sandra said, my name is Nyambe. I'm the founder and CEO of Zamgoat Products Limited. Basically, no entrepreneur professor. I'm simply an ordinary entrepreneur like many of you are. And my story is a very basic story, simple story, some story that you might have heard before, maybe some of you have lived like an entrepreneur. So I was born in a typical Zambian rural setup in 1982, south of Kafue in Nawama village. That's where I was born and raised there. I did my primary education there, and then from there I went to some secondary school in the same southern province, in Mapanza, St. Mark's High School. I'm not sure if we have a Santemako boy around here. It was an all-boys school. Oh, wonderful! There you are. I feel proud to see you. Yes, so that's where I did my secondary education from, and then from there, like most Zambian entrepreneurial stories, I don't know what I can say. Fortunately or fortunately, I did not have the means or the capacity to straight away go into college after doing my secondary education, and then therefore I had to evaluate who I was at the time, my aspirations, and then I tried to figure out my own way. I started out working for some company within Lusaka, a fast food arrangement within Lusaka, where I was first engaged as a cleaner, for that matter. That was my first job, but believe me, as I was doing that job, I never felt comfortable, and I felt it within me that I can do better than this. I don't want to mention the company, but it was some fast food.
For political, legal reasons. Okay.
So that was my first working experience, and that is what actually started pushing me. Right there in that job, I realized then that now I'm more than this, I can do more than this. I started pushing, and I remember I applied to the owner of the company at some point to say, I want to be promoted. I feel like I can do better in this sales role. I applied, I wrote to the owner to say, I want to be promoted to the fast food arrangement had two compartments, the food section as well as the mini-mart section. So I applied to be promoted to the mini-mart section where I should have been employed as a sales representative there. Because those in that organization were some of, I think at that time, were highly preferred employees of that company at the time. So I felt, I think I need to be there. Unfortunately, after writing to the MD over my need to be promoted to that function, somehow some colleagues within the organization felt, challenged, and then they became so hard on me, and I was fired. Right? Like most entrepreneurs have in the journeys, I was fired. That was the first firing that I experienced. Before then, let me just rewind the story a little bit. I want you to get a full glimpse of who I am. So before I was fired, actually, what happened as I kept on pushing, and then I felt I wasn't appreciated. My abilities were not recognized in that organization. I remember at some point I had a strong passion, to become a military person, and I remember attending some ZAF interviews where, I came among the finalists, and then from nowhere, for some reason, beyond our understanding then, we were left out, and then some other people that we did not participate with in the the interview process, we were selected to go to Livingstone for the actual trainings, to begin their 6 months trainings in the Air Force. And that's how I lost my interest in the military, but then I kept on my mustache, military general. So after that, then that's when then I pushed to apply to be promoted in that fast food arrangement, and for some reason I got fired. Then from there I moved on. My second assignment, I got another job in some other food setup as a waiter. That was some kind of an upgrade, huh? I think, from a cleaner to a waiter. Okay. So there, I pushed. I think from no previous, waitering experience, I think within 2 weeks, I became a very good waiter that was highly preferred among the guests that visited that, outfit. And in no time, one of our guests at that restaurant, I think, liked me so much so that whenever he visited that restaurant, he asked for my services. And at some point, then he offered me a job. So I think, you're so good, I want you to come and work in my company. He used to run some, auto fitment center within Lusaka here. And he invited me to come over to his office. I went there. And then he assigned me to see his manager. And for some reason, that forework manager thought that what I was best suited for at the time was to work in the fitment center as a tire fitter. So, a demotion now. Went to a tire fitter. That was a hard job. That really needed me, stripping off tires and fitting tires on vehicles. It was tough, and I felt, I can do better than this. I said, I don't like it. So after working for some time, then I pushed now to upgrade myself. Okay, maybe these people do not believe what I'm capable of, or do not recognize my abilities because of my low education qualifications, and then that's how I applied. I pushed now for an advance. I don't have the means in the first place to go straight away into college, so I pushed for an advance through that employer. And then I started attending some business administration studies after work at the time. And I was a little bit elevated from that center. I was chosen among the 2 people that were assigned to open a new branch at a new outlet for that company. From there, towards the finishing of my course, the branch manager then somehow also now started, behaving funny, if that's the right way. And in no time, he did whatever he did, and then I was fired. I was fired. Second firing. Okay, that's it. And I kept on moving. Next assignment, I think now, with that training and a bit of exposure here and there, I landed in the role that I wanted of a salesperson. I worked for an insurance company. At the time, I think that's when African Life Assurance had just come on board. If I remember this, I think, African Life Assurance, when they just came on board, and I was engaged as a sales agent, and that enhanced my, experience in the sales role. From there, I was setting a very difficult policy at the time. It was difficult to convince a client to take up your policy. It was something that clients used to associate with Satanism at the time.
Well, if you're talking about life, in fact, why are you talking about my death, my funeral?
Yeah, so it was a very terrible, policy or product to sell. And now for this new self-made salesman, it was even more challenging. In no time, I realized I think I'm not achieving anything with this. I created that now with that the simple trade that I did in business administration. I was able to land myself another role with some asbestos roofing company, a marketing company that was distributing tap products at the time. I was engaged as a field sales representative. And, so as I was in my new role now, that was my third role, if you're following the story. I don't think, I hope that not any one of you is getting bored with the story. Please follow it, it's good. I'm trying to create a background to my entrepreneurial personality.
So they're following your story very well. They're saying it's the fourth.
That's good.
Maybe before you proceed to that one, I want to know what were the things that you're doing as a waiter that made people get like you so much, because that's a general complaint about service and waiters and not knowing that from just being a good waiter you can get lots of opportunities.
Yeah, I think it was dedication to my job at the time and giving it the best of myself. That's what I think made me stand out.
What does that look like in practical terms? What is the best?
In practical terms, especially in the hospitality industry, I think when you are a waiter, in essence, you are a customer service person. You're not just someone who is to take the food from the kitchen to the customer on the table. You are a customer interface person. So you're the first point of contact with the customers that come in the restaurant. And based on how I used to interact with those customers, that's how I earned myself, the credit of being a preferred waiter at the time in that restaurant. I hope that answers
yes, it does. And then you were going on now to the next
phase. The next phase now, with that field sales representative role at an asbestos roofing marketing company, that's when now the entrepreneurial thing in me started bubbling up. After working with them, I think it was barely 8 months, I realized within a short space of time, I had made so much money for them at the time. And the construction industry at the time, that was not like I already said, I'm not very old, I'm still very young. 2006.
You're 32 right now.
I'm 32 right now. So the construction industry then was just, I think, booming. There was a lot of construction projects around. It became a good, opportunity for me to sell those products, and I made a lot of money for those guys within a short space of time. And I realized, wow, this is good if I can, as I was going out in the field, and I realized, okay, I'm making so much money, but then when I looked at the remuneration, what I was paid at the end of the month, I realized that there was a mismatch somehow. And frustration started, accumulating within me. I started getting frustrated with what I was doing. I'm putting in so much, but then I don't feel to be appreciated. That was in 2006 with that field sales role. And then so doing, I realized at the time, okay, I need to start my own business. And I looked at myself, what do I don't have the monies? What do I start? What do I do? Then that's when I first attempted to start my own business. At the time, it was in the solar energy industry. It was also a new thing on the market. I had this, I have this eye to see what most people cannot see. I don't know how it is, whether it is inborn or
it's entrepreneurship.
Yeah, some things you can't understand even yourself, you fail to understand. So at the time, the solar industry was a trending thing, and it was an interesting opportunity for me. That was in 2007, I think. And I realized, okay, I don't have the money, but then how do I go about this? I found a friend of mine. He was a solar energy expert. At the time, he had no job. He was a technical director in the previous role where he worked. So I thought, okay, it would be a good idea for me to talk to him, and then we partner, engage him so that he provided the technical, know-how in the industry, in the business that we have to form, and I provide the administrative, based on trainings, simple training, and also the sales experience that I had. I thought, okay, I can sell better in the administrative and marketing and sales of functions of the business. That's how we registered our first business, the Paco Solar Technologies and General Electrics. And then as we were trying out to make that business a reality, I had another terrible experience again that most entrepreneurs do experience. Our strategy was to develop the company through sales or the jobs that we are to get, consider that we do not have money as promoters of that company, so we had embarked on a strategy of taking advantage of the solar hype at the time. Perhaps we could market our services to people or institutions that were seeking for solar services. Then when we get the jobs, we start with installation service at first, and then as we get those jobs, we keep on reinvesting in the business until we grow to a capacity where we start stocking solar equipment for supplies. But then, before we could get anywhere, significant, this guy somehow, I think some people, that also gave me another lesson that it's not everyone who is an entrepreneur. For some people, you can present an opportunity right before them, but they'll still opt to go to what seems to be easier for them. So that guy left me and opted to get a job in another established organization. It wasn't really an established, but it was also a new organization. But then the promoter of the organization had a bit of money, and they engaged him as a technical director in that company. And he left me. I was left in a dry pond like a fish. So that's how also that vision somehow, first entrepreneurial failure, it died a natural death with time. And because I had to survive, I had a family at the time already. I had to survive, and I was pushed back into looking for a job somewhere. And the next assignment now based on that previous sales role, my short entrepreneurial experience, I became so much convincing now to some new company. There was a new company that had just come on board. It was a Tanzanian company, or let me say East African company, because they're huge in the entire East African region. So they were opening a branch here in Zambia, a distribution branch. And I went to them, and they engaged me as a country sales representative. Instead of, marketing their products. They were into food products, various food products. I became the country sales representative in Zambia. From there, after working with them, I think for about 2 years, the entrepreneurial thing kept coming on, and I just wanted to do something for myself. I was dealing mostly with the retail market segment, and I saw some opportunity in the seafood sector. Based on my other encounter or exposure at the restaurant, the Chinese restaurant that I used to work for as a waiter, I used to meet some foreign guys, Tanzanian guys that were bringing seafood from Tanzania. I realized these guys are coming all the way from Tanzania, bringing seafood here. What if me as Zambian, and when they come here, they live big. What if I try out something and then I know the market better here, go bring those seafoods from where they come from and then start supplying. So I started something that's the sector seafood delicacy. And I ran with it.
Were you going to order?
All right. So
how was that working?
I did not, at the time when I started, that business, I did not have, the money that it required for me to fully implement it the way it should have been. So the implementation strategy was to start with local fish, but obviously branding ourselves as a seafood delicacy.
Now tell me, what kind of local fish tastes like? Were you just calling bream seafood? This is king creek or what?
I don't know whether bream or whatever, it is seafood. It comes from the water, So that was our strategy, to start with local fish. So I started going out to the first trip I made was to Mpulungu.
Good seafood.
So I bring Buga from there. That's another version of Montreal. So I started bringing Buga from Pulungu. I did not have enough money at the time. I did not have my own transport. So I could get on a bus, go to Pulungu, buy, the first consignment was 8 bags of Buga. I put them on a bus. can't remember the name of the bus at the time, but I put on this big Marco Polo bus that you go long distances. And then that fish, when I bring it here, I took it to some supermarket that I had already made contact with. It went well. Then from Buga Buga, I added tilapia to my product line. I started going to Chipepo on Lake Kariba to get tilapia, Zambian, our wild tilapia from Kariba there, which is, I think, is highly sought after in the market. It's highly preferred and is farmed tilapia. It's more taste actually. So I started bringing that from Chipepo. And I had some terrible experience. At some point I almost drowned. That's why I had the first encounter, I think, where fear came out of me. That moment, fear left me for a moment. I found myself in the middle of the lake where I could not see where I'm coming from. I could not see where I'm going. Then the waves became so big. There were three of us in a small canoed, boat. Those guys called it a dinghy. It was a triangular kind of a boat. I had my, fish with me there. These guys besides me paddling. So the waves became so strong. And I remember at some point that, there's a time in the Bible when was it Jesus that prayed and the waters come. I experienced that. Serious, I experienced that. It's the truth I'm telling you. The waters became so hot. We were going against the wave. I could not see where we were going. I could not see where we were coming. And oh God, this is death now. And I don't know how to swim. If I would drown here, then I'll go like a stone. I closed my eyes and then prayed, said the short prayer, and believe me, in a space of 2 minutes, the waters calmed down. Serious, that's a true story. The waters calmed down.
Were you tempted to just step out and walk?
Yeah. So the waters calmed. So at that time, as I was praying, or just before praying, fear left me. I felt fearless. I felt just like an object. I didn't feel like a human being. You don't feel anything. Oh, gone. The only thing I said was a prayer, and then the waters calmed down. And then we paddled to the harbor. That business continued. Then at some point, I think based on the initial implementation strategy, I got it wrong. So that was an entrepreneurial lesson that I got from that. The implementation strategy of my business, I started with a wrong model, which was wholesale based. But then consider that I had limited working capital at the time. So I found myself in a situation whereby I could go to these lakes, rivers, I get my fish, and then I come and give some supermarket on credit. They take time to pay me. And before I knew it, I was chewing into my capital. And then, that business died a natural death. I tried here and there. I tried here and there to save it, to no avail. It is seafood delicacy in the vision, died a natural death. I had a family to look after. I had to find something, or to get something, or to do something that brings me some income so that I can sustain myself and my family. So pushed back into employment. The same company that I had left, the same Tanzanian company, I went back there, they re-employed me. And they re-employed me and then worked with them again. I think the last episode was merely for a year or so. Then back, and that's how Zamgoat now was born as I was going. Because I had this understanding of the market. I understand the Zambian market, or the retail market especially. I understand the consumer market. I understand what people like the most. So based on that, the vision now for Zamgoat started coming up. So about myself, my personal experiences, or who I am, my definition, that's what I am, that's what I've been through, and up to now, from the time that was on 22nd of July when I left that company, the Tanzanian company, I started Zamgoat, and I'm here today. Wow. So it's a basic entrepreneurial story that most of you have gone through. It's not a story, a fancy entrepreneurial story that was all easy. It is something that has really come a long way with a lot of experiences. And perhaps one of the things that I should share about my entrepreneurial story is that beyond my frustration in whatever opportunities I was finding myself on, but also I was looking at my responsibilities in my life. And then I was afraid that I would not be in a position to meet my responsibilities. I'm the last born in a family of 7. I happen to be, in my own right, I happen to be the most privileged. None of my siblings, have completed their secondary education. Well, there's one, but then he's not really doing that much. He's not pushing myself. Somehow, the family looks up to me, and I realized my mother is still there, my father is late, and I realized, well, if I have to do anything significant in terms of meeting my responsibility, I have to take an extraordinary path. And that's how the entrepreneurial life started in me.
Okay. So, wow, that's really an incredible story. Then if we come to Zamgoat, first of all, I must comment that it's sort of the trend that it's usually the third or fourth that really succeeds. Because the first one, even if as an entrepreneur you're excited with the idea, it doesn't really work because they're still paying lots of fees, okay, learning. The second one, similar thing. Now with Zamgoat, why goat?
Why goat?
Yes.
Well, for me, I think it was a combination of 2 factors. The first one, which I expect should be the case for any entrepreneur, was the demand aspect of it. I looked at the demand trends for goat meat, both locally, regionally, and global at large. I think there is an increasing demand pattern for goat meat. It is a highly preferred meat, especially given its nutrition and health, benefits and values. Then the other factor is an issue of my background, my upbringing, being raised in a village setup. I realized at the time we were keeping goats, but not for economic reasons. It was just one of those village prestige activities. But despite having so many goats, we were the poorest in our community. So now looking at combining or looking at this increasing demand for goat meat and then connecting it with my background, my upbringing, I realized, well, I think somehow as an entrepreneur I can be a solution to, our colleagues in the rural areas. So that's how Zamgoat was born, a combination of meeting the increasing demand for goat meat, then also trying to help the rural communities using what they already have, which is goats. And then also, riding on the fact that goats, or the goat sector itself, I think it's something that has not been fully exploited commercially in Zambia. Not only in Zambia, I think around the world, it's a sector that has been marginalized despite its promising indicators. Okay. So as an entrepreneur, it's an opportunity and that's how I'm working on Zamgoat.
And then what were the actual steps? Because I know that a lot of people go out looking for goat sausage, you drive far, goat meat, goat this, and we go to different places. But how did you start? Did you start by setting up a big company, or did you start by selling Ichopo, or how did you start?
Wow. Again, it gets back to the typical entrepreneurial story. I started with barely nothing other than the vision, and that's how I've been. I started with nothing but the vision. I remember, I think I had mail. It was something around 2,000 kwacha at the time that I had at my disposal to start the venture. I started out going to Chibodia. I started bootstrapping, which we in the entrepreneurial world basically bootstrapping my way into the business. So I started going out to Chibodia. I remember I bought 2 goats, first consignment, and I went with a scale. So, I put up a very funny scene at Chibodia there. Most of the guys there, the regulars that buy goats, the traders in goats, they laughed at me at the time. Anyway, you ufuna kuwenga, mbuzi yamo yonachana. Those guys laughed at me, but I was up to something because I wanted to understand first the metrics. I wanted to understand the cost issues that go around the goats. Since I wanted to go into it commercial, I'm not buying those goats for consumption. So I wanted to understand how much I'm buying the meat per kilo. So I had to weigh the live goats, and that gave me, the metrics that I wanted. And from there on, I've been an expert in the industry. So I bought those goats. I don't have my own processing equipment. Then I had a friend of mine in Emasde who ran a butcher at the time. I went to him and I started processing my goats from there. And then from the Emasde, I would cut, pre-pack, and then he started put my labels there. At the time the company started as exotic goats, meat products. It not started Zamgoat. Believe me, it not started Zamgoat, that exotic goats meat products. Focused on goat meat itself. Okay. So from there, process and then pack my meat in aqua bags and get on a bus, deliver to Liwala, Kawata, Shilenje. And I realized, okay, those products were going. They were selling, people were buying. When I supply, they finish. I could not, at some point, I did not even have the capacity now to supply regularly whenever, those customers called upon me to supply. So, in due course, I think after pushing for about 1 year, not 1 year, it was half a year, about 6 months, bootstrapping, no equipment of my own, with nearly about 2,000 working capital. Then somehow, I applied for government support through the Youth Development Fund, and my project was one of those that were, I think I was 16 at the time, that were, supported by the government through the Youth Development Fund at the time, and that's how I was able to set up my own butchery, bought my own, equipment, butcher boy, or you call it banso, and some simple misa. I was not able to buy, a proper functioning mesa, which is ideal, an imported one, because locally here we do not manufacture those things. So I engaged some man in Tendere who does this fabrication, and he fabricated for me a simple mesa that could do the job at the time. So that's how it all started up.
Wow, brilliant. And that's really excellent. And then you grew that company. Now you're buying goats from rural farmers. Now you've moved from just buying from Chipoli. And you say you are actually the first commercial scale aggregator. So when you say aggregator, what do you mean by that?
Alright, okay. Aggregator in the sense that our model, maybe I should also give a background of our model. In fact, I've already done so because I mentioned the social aspect of our business. So our business model is twofold. One, obviously, we're into it for profit. We're a for-profit business, but then we're also a social enterprise with a view of helping rural communities, out of poverty using what they already have got. Okay. So when we say aggregating, we are into buying these goats from different individual farmers or suppliers in the rural areas, and then or set up aggregation centers in rural areas and then buy them easily without the hard of having to travel the whole village for you to go look for one goat here or the other goat there, and then from there process those goats and then distribute the products in our targeted markets. So that is how we are positioning ourselves. Yes.
And tell us about your international experience, international funding, training for that, and what you did in that space.
All right. So, in my continued business development efforts, I have taken a different approach from the traditional approach of developing a business in Zambia. Obviously, based on my realities, it's not what might be right for everyone. But when I looked at my realities as an entrepreneur working on Zamgoat, I realized that I'm working on a sector that is not fully appreciated in Zambia. It is a sector that we can classify as a greenfield, sector. So I realized if I'm to pursue traditional business development services, I might not easily get those locally here, if at all they exist in the manner that one would want to get them. So from that background, then I started looking beyond borders, and one of the strategies that I used to try and possibly get something out there was to strategically position my business by way of doing what might not really be Zambian according to our entrepreneurial fiber here. I started selling out my idea, putting it wherever I could, so that maybe some potential investor or collaborator could learn of it and possibly get in touch, and then we keep moving, we keep developing the business. So I've fully embraced social media. I've embraced crowdfunding sites.
Tell us about crowdfunding. What is crowdfunding?
Well, okay. Crowdfunding, I think, it's not something that is yet common in Zambia, and I'm yet to see a Zambian contribute to a crowd fund. I'm yet to see. Is there anyone who has contributed to a crowdfund campaign in here?
No.
So it is not something that is...
Actually starting from, what is that?
Okay, so it's not something that is even yet common around. So crowdfunding platforms that provide the general public with the opportunity to contribute to a cause. It could be a business or otherwise, cause. So for the campaigner, you have the opportunity to set up your campaign on that platform. These crowdfunding platform owners develop platforms that enable funders and funding seekers to connect. Okay, using that online crowdfunding platform. It's an online platform that connects funders and funding seekers. So there are a number of them, and most of them.
Could you give a few names of crowdfunding sites?
All right, there are different of them, focused on different areas, but there's Kickstarter, Indiegogo. Kickstarter and Indiegogo are more generic in nature. They are not necessarily focused on business or fundraising for business. And then we also have crowdfunding platforms that are focused on connecting entrepreneurs and investors, like the Venture Capital for Africa platform. So these platforms, entrepreneurs like you and me that are so aggressive in their business development efforts, list their ideas there. Obviously, like I said before, that is something that might not be really Zambian according to our making, because somehow we have a tendency of wanting to keep ideas to ourselves for the fear of someone stealing them. But if you are an entrepreneur that is up to developing a business that is to outlive you, and not a sustenance business that is only able to feed you, then you really, I think, you have to do away with that notion. So putting out your ideas out there, strategic and obvious. So you put out your information there, and then with an overall objective of trying to attract other stakeholders to work with you in your overall objective of developing the business. At the end of the day, when we started these businesses, our goal is to develop a successive business. I think it means nothing for you to have a very brilliant idea and keep it to yourself, keep singing about it, if you can't develop it. Okay? Or have this brilliant idea that is just an idea, and then you've got literally no means to make it a sustainable business, grow to the level of Zambia, and or just because you want to own it as Mr. Pili or Mr. or whatever, you want to be the sole owner in that business. Sorry to mention Mr. Pili, I think I should have mentioned a Tonga name or something.
So yes. What are the things that funders are looking for? I know that in Zambia, like you said, traditionally people say, I'm going to the bank, I've got an idea, but banks are not designed to support startups. They don't support, like the loans are not really good for just an idea, because you have to start paying interest before you test out everything. But when you go externally looking at investors, whether it's angel investors or venture capitalists, what do they look for?
All right. Obviously, there are a number of factors that investors look for in a business idea or in a business. One, the thumb rule for any investment is that they don't invest in ideas. So you need to do the initial, you need to do the the homework yourself. First, try and prove your concept at some level, whatever level it might be. It might be delivering your products in some cooper bags. You are proving your concept as long as there's some demand. Prove that there's demand for what you are doing out there. Then some investor will get interested. As opposed to marketing ideas to investors. They don't invest in ideas. That's the thumb rule for any investor, be it an angel investor, impact investor, or venture capital, whatever you want to call it. They don't invest in plain ideas unless those that are not seasoned. But any professional or seasoned investor, they will never invest in an idea. So you need to prove some milestones, show some traction on the ground. One, prove that there is existing demand. Then be committed to your idea. Be committed to what you are working on. Be in it, all of yourself. Okay?
You can't do it part-time. Say, I've got a great idea, but I've got this. But give me some money, but I'll do this.
It will be difficult for you to get an investor that way.
Okay.
Yeah. Then investors are not a bad idea. But again, I'm a Zambian and I know how I interact with a lot of my colleagues around here. This phobia for investors or bringing, external parties in our undertakings, and it's because that's how we are made as Zambians. Because most of our role models that we've seen as successful business people are people that have made it based on the sheer, or based on their fact of their well-doing personality, because they made some big bag somewhere, they invest in some business and it all booms. But for a typical entrepreneurial story, it does not always start that way. And for most successful businesses, believe me, you really need to work your back out at it.
Great. And I think as one of my last questions will be, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs? Somebody that wants to follow the route that you followed, from just an idea, you've done something and you've gone outside to raise some funding, and you still are on a mission, like you mentioned earlier. What advice do you have?
The first advice is a warning. Don't follow my road if you are not an entrepreneur. If you have not given yourself to being an entrepreneur, don't follow my road. It's a difficult one. At some point, if you are not that strong, you might even lose your life.
If your prayer is not powerful.
So this means that I think only people that really fail. Entrepreneurship, by the way, it's not a simple undertaking. It's not a one-off undertaking. It's not a short-term undertaking. It is a lifelong journey. So when you identify yourself to be an entrepreneur, it is something that you need to commit yourself to your whole life, not just for this particular phase of your life because you are experiencing some economic hardships. Now I want to be an entrepreneur. You end up dying with BP. So this is for people that have given themselves to it. It's not an easy path, it's always a difficult path, but when you commit yourself to it, believe me, the rewards that are in being an entrepreneur are more than the comfort, the short-term comfort that we see, or that is so attractive in being an employee or somewhere.
And my last question then would be, what, if you were government, or what advice would you give government to promote real entrepreneurship in Zambia?
I think my advice to government, like everyone's advice, like many calls that have been made before, is for government to create an enabling environment for entrepreneurs. in the policies that government makes that impact the undertakings of entrepreneurs. Talking of things like taxes, I think our tax regime, and this is something that not so many people I think have talked about. Our tax regime here in Zambia is not so supportive to small businesses or startup businesses. You know, whereby a small business is mostly expected to undergo the same tax, obligations that an established business is expected to fulfill. So that in itself somehow is the beginning of failure for most Zambian businesses. And in so doing, most Zambian businesses, again, they don't know that most of them, in fact, a lot of us are indebted to ZRA, to the tax man, unknowingly so. Why? Because of our tax regime. It is not in support of us. I think if I would propose something to government is for them to come up with a measure that gives an automatic tax break maybe for certain enterprises that of a certain age. That should be automatic and non-negotiable until when you reach some, agreeable milestones, which can be agreed between the private sector and the government itself. Then you start now paying to government. But if we are to promote entrepreneurs, Zambian entrepreneurs, so that then we can position ourselves as key players in our economy, tax incentive for Zambian entrepreneurs is a key requirement that needs to be done. That is in trying to develop an enabling environment.
Right, thank you very much. We're going to take a few questions from the audience, and then if there are a lot of questions, we can ask him after the interview. There's a question there.
Thank you. Congratulations, I should start off by persevering. As you've said, it's not an easy journey when you have a family or siblings, but you capture the true spirit of a true family man and got there in the end, and will continue to persevere, as I can sense from what you're saying. And also my other congratulations is, from what I can tell actually, what I haven't seen, but what I've heard so far, I put you down as one of the first to get crowdfunding in Zambia actually, by Kickstarter. It's a good platform. My friends have done it, been quite successful at it, and congratulations on that. And also on the social entrepreneurial side of things, where you're empowering other farmers who are out there who basically, do what you lost. When you touched upon your friend who was a technical guy, sometimes it's not worth reinventing the wheel when people have already got the skills to produce a perfect product. And you identified that very early, and you got them out there. So that's where my question comes in now. Is that you've identified these farmers, you've identified the wholesalers or resellers. How do you ensure that your brand is protected? Because you've now got a brand, which is Zamgoat. How do you ensure that is protected in terms of the quality of the goat that's going there? Because in Zambia we have a lot of different varieties of goats that exist, which people don't realize when they go to Nyambe or Shoppers or whatever. We all just come out and say, oh, it feels like I was eating beef instead of goat there. But there's some which are tastier than others, some which are tougher than others. And I'm sure, as you said, from your marketing and your understanding of what's out there and what to buy and what's selling quicker, you've identified that. So please educate us laymen, with regards to, we obviously met earlier on, and I said, I'm going to talk about goat. Because like everyone else, whenever we have a party, I drive over to my uncle's in Kanagata, or I send someone who's adventurous to Chihuahua to go get one there. And I meet him halfway or something. But if you can give advice, that would be great. But preferably, I would like to buy from you, because I know the return is great with regards to, yes, you're making money as a profit side of things, but my money that I give to you goes further, by empowering the guy who's behind there and so forth. Because as we know in our tribes here, we can complain about the dollar and everything else like that, but this is Zambia. We've always lived with the dollar, whether it's at 1, 2, 3, 50, it doesn't matter, we'll still live with it. We're not gonna pack up a gold.
Thanks for that
Please
question.
answer that one.
Alright, okay.
Sorry, Cyrus.
Alright, Can I take that now?
Yes, sure.
Okay, I think let's do it here one question at a time. Thank you so much, first of all, for your kind words. I feel encouraged, and I think you mentioned quite a number of issues, but then I've picked out the 2 or 3 critical issues that I feel I should respond to. Firstly, I think it's just a clarification. On my international investments into Zamgoat is not something that I've really raised through crowdfunding. The first one has not come through crowdfunding. I've used crowdfunding because I've raised money through crowdfunding, but then using crowdfunding platforms, I was able to expose myself to potential investors, and then some investor, impact investor, well, not a traditional investor, impact investor with whom we were able to work out a flexible investment term sheet, invested in Zamgoat in a very, what I would say, attractive package that I wouldn't have gotten, easily around here. So we got some unique equity investment arrangement, which is classified as redeemable equity, whereby after a given period we should be able to buy back that equity if we want to retain the small shareholding that we parted away with. But in my case, I think based on our business development strategy, that works well for us having an investor on board, because then he serves not only as an investor but also as an advisor to the business, and also as a link between other investors, as we continue to develop the business. Okay. Then the other thing, now come to your issue
on quality.
On the quality, how do we ensure product quality? Yes, there's some goats that really are hard to chew, and you need maybe to cook for in food if you have to enjoy the meat. So to ensure that we have that quality control, we are positioned also to work on the supply side of the business, that is working with the producers of goats themselves, mainly who happen to be the small farmers as our target suppliers based on our social mission. So how do we work with them? Through our aggregation processes. Then we also help to empower them with goat raising knowledge and techniques, so that they produce goats that are of market standards, as opposed to just keeping goats like we have been keeping them around. You keep any goat, a pygmy goat, Nubian goat, whatever it is, even when it might not be for meat production. So we're also trying to educate them on the need for them to keep breeds that are ideal for meat production. Because that's, I think, where the huge of the gain for them is in meat production. We cannot initially always talk of milk production in Zambia for goat milk. I think the niche for that is still very, very low, and I think it should take some time for it to be developed. But we have a currently available niche of the goat meat side of it. So the emphasis is to help them raise breeds of goats that are ideal for meat production.
Great, thank you for that.
And sorry, you also mentioned over the last one, the third one was the dollar issue. Like any business, obviously, when you are looking at international investments, obviously you're affected by the dollar. For instance, if you get some investment, when your kwacha dollar rate is still favorable to your side, and then at the time of you paying a return to those investors, it happens that the dollar has gone so high. The kwacha has lost so much value at the time that you got those investments, that it means that you end up paying more than you should have paid if everything was normal. So obviously, like another business, that is something that an entrepreneur, when you're looking at international funding, you need to take that into consideration as well.
Great.
Hey Paul, congratulations again. I think the congratulations will continue coming throughout the night. My question was, I didn't really get the sense of where you started from. You say that you started with 2 goats. But I'd like to know where you're sitting now in terms of the number of goats that you're probably selling whether it's per month, or I don't know how you do it. I just want to have a sense of what the size of the business is now.
Alright, okay, is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Thank you again, thanks for that question. Well, to respond to your question, I would say starting with those 2 goats, but then I can summarily say that over the 3 years, I think we've done more than 2,300 goats. And that is still based with limited operational capacity. I think until recently, with the new developments that we are beginning to see in our business development efforts, believe me, we never had transport. We did not have our own, ideal processing, let me say ideal processing equipment, because I mentioned over the minster that we initially procured that was not really of good standard. So that, to some extent, the lack of ideal operational capacity somehow, curtailed our efforts to fully penetrate the market at the rate that we wanted to, and also to develop the business that we wanted to. But using that limited capacity, we have over the last 3 years sold 2,300 goats, and that, I think in total up to now we earned something that is way above $150,000 in terms of revenues, not profits. Okay, so of late, is it currently we are reorganizing. So we're trying to organize ourselves. We are setting up a new base somewhere around the Olympia area, and then we're also trying to maximize our marketing efforts so that we can then penetrate certain market segments that we were not able to, in our last episode. For instance, I will mention, just for your reference, markets like Spa, we're not able to penetrate those markets based on our lack of, ideal delivery systems. Those, type of markets require you to have ideal transport. For instance, you need to have a port truck for you to deliver to them. You can't take your meat in some Uber bags or in the back of a taxi and deliver to such places. So that became a barrier. So now, based on our, recent developments, I think we are better positioned, to put our brand in such markets.
Thank you. Most businesses tend to revolve around an individual, especially in the Zambian setup, in a way that they do not survive once the individual dies. Comparatively, in the Western and European world, you find a company has been in existence for centuries. What steps are you taking to ensure that the business survives you and it continues being an employer, especially taking into account that entrepreneurship is the end thing, and it is one of the enterprises that will ultimately employ a lot of people.
Thank you so much for that query again. I think my response firstly would be to say the steps that one needs to take, or that we are taking, to ensure that the business that we are developing outlives me as the founder of the business is in the designing of the business itself. That's why the first step, I think, is the designing of the business itself. The way we've designed the business, we've designed the business with a sustainable business model. I think that, will outlive me, possibly. And then 2, obviously, is to adhere to certain corporate governance, principles of bring on board, other people on board, so that you are not the sole drive of the business. If tomorrow I'm down or whatever happens, then the other colleagues that I'm working with in the business, having educated them on my vision, they should be able to carry on the vision. So, 1, the designing of the business itself, the business concept, the model around it. The 2, adhering to corporate governance principles that support the continuance of your business even when you are no longer in a position to be there for it. Thank you.
I wanted to find out from you, if you had to start with entrepreneurship, Zambia, then what would you do differently? And number two, what comes to mind when you think of the relationship between women and entrepreneurship in Zambia?
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am, for that question. What would I do if I were to retake the entrepreneurship journey? Well, in my case, I think the path that I've passed maybe was the right path for me. Those failures that I underwent were good for me. They, molded me. They, built me up to have a strong, mantra for entrepreneurship, and also, well, I don't think there would be another way that I would desire. I still want to go through the same if I were to start all over again. For learning, it's good for learning. The failure that I've had, the many failures that I've had, those, really are what have made me to be the passionate and determined entrepreneur that I may seem to be today. And then, basically about starting over. I don't think I would recommend another way. Sometimes start where you are. Don't wait, to have everything. I didn't wait to have everything, but because I started doing, I learned, a lot about entrepreneurship. I learned a lot about a particular business sector that I was working in. And when something fails, I didn't work, I know where and why it has failed. Then for women entrepreneurship in Zambia, we are getting there, and it's encouraging to see a number of women in here today. Though I think we still need a lot more commitment and action on the part of the women themselves. Entrepreneurship is not a journey that is undertaken based on the push or because someone has told you to be an entrepreneur or because there is a call for women entrepreneurs for women to take up entrepreneurship. But I think it is a personal thing and it is a matter of choice. You decide, you choose to be an entrepreneur based on your own realities as an individual. So women are encouraged to understand themselves, understand their realities, personal realities, environmental realities, and if they need to be, things commanded that you have to start up your own business, so be it. For instance, now in the current, economy, I think it is automatic. That's what the economy, demands us to be entrepreneurs, all of us. If we are to sustain the growth of the economy, and if we are to personally, be economically independent, then we have to take up some entrepreneurship of some kind, including women themselves.
Yes.
Good evening, everybody. I've got two questions. One is, you mentioned earlier that you're not able to penetrate stores like Spam. So who are you currently supplying the gold to? And the other question is, how many employees do you have at the moment? Thank you.
All right. Okay. I think I gave a background first of our journey, where we're coming from, and responding to your question, we've been supplying. I indicated, I think in response to the other question, that we are reorganizing ourselves, currently undergoing some reorganization as a business based on our recent developments. Then in our previous episode, we've been supplying shops around, small shops, especially around Kawata, Liwala area. There's Baruch Milmat as an example, one of them. Those of you that are from Chilenje, is it Liwala? South, there used to be Baruch at Katungu area there. It's sort of some Indian now who takes the halal products, which currently we do not yet have that halal certification. But then there is another outlet on the Liwala South end, so that's one of the shops that we've been supplying. Then in terms of employees, we are basically still a very small firm. I think currently there are 3 of us that are full-time committed to the venture. Obviously, like any growing or small business that is trying to get somewhere, you cannot overcommit yourself to just for the sake of wanting to be seen to be big. Then you have a lot of employees. That will be the beginning of defeat itself if those employees are not, for instance, bringing the value that you wanted to bring in the company. So you employ based on your production capacity, and obviously your capacity to pay those people. Yeah. But we are doing a lot of reorganization currently, so we promise a lot of jobs going forward. And,
tell us about your vision. Like briefly, what's your vision? Where do you see Zamgoat? Like just in under 15 seconds or so.
all right. Okay. I think I'll give you the period of 5 years. We see ourselves as a scalable business operation, scalable and profitable business operation that is attractive. Since we have, brought in some foreign party now in our shareholding, so that is attractive to a potential acquirer. And we are doing everything possible to try to position ourselves as such. And that comes back to what my brother had mentioned of how are we protecting our brand in the market. So we are doing everything possible to position ourselves, for a potential acquisition. It's a rare thing in Zambia, but there's always a beginning point, and recently there's been some positive indicators that I think it is possible for a Zambian SME to be acquired either by a local, company or some other international company can still buy you.
Especially that you already have the ZAM at the beginning. Great, thank you very much. Chris, it's your question.
Good evening. You have quite a great story there. I think congratulations for what you've done so far. It's pretty inspiring. My question is, at which point did you formalize your business? I know that a lot of Zambians, a lot of us who would be entrepreneurs, we find that we're running chicken business and we don't formalize, we don't do our paperwork, hence we can't access financing. I think in your story you spoke about having access to government funds. So at which point did you have your papers right? I'm not just talking about going to Accra and putting up your papers, but even your accounting system such that you can show somebody that this is going to be a profitable business on paper. And as a rider to that question, how effective was the government the funding that you accessed? Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, my brother, for that question. Right. I seem to be losing my. Okay. Just a reminder,
I spoke about the formalization.
All right. Good. I have it. Okay. Yeah. Formalization. At what point did I formalize my business? For me, I think I was privileged based on my other business episodes, so that gave me a background to my current business undertaking. So for me, it was at the first time that I first thought of starting Zamgoat, at the time when started goods, meat products. Obviously, the first thing that came into mind was to formalize it. Okay, that is based on my previous episode, my other business background, and that's why I said that again comes back to if I were to take another, if I were to have another take at my journey, what would it be? So the experience I had was the best for me because it positioned me well to do things, in a manner that I should do it going forward. So I formalized my business. The first time I started formalization was one of the things that came on mind. Then obviously I had weaknesses on systems developed, put up accounting systems that ensure that your business is on the right track for growth. Then the second question.
Government funding.
Government funding, how effective was it? Yeah. I would say the government funding, I think, was what started everything. Because, like I said, from bootstrapping of riding on buses with Uber bags, delivering goat meat to Livara and Kawata, then I was able to set up my own, butcher and procure my own initial equipment at the time. So that was effective in its own right. Then maybe the only gap that was there somehow, I think if I had found some other early on, if I had come across some follow-up, funding support somehow, I should have maybe moved at a much faster rate than I have done, that I have, moved at. But then there was a gap after I got that initial investment. Somehow it took me time again, to access some additional, financing. And in business, every growing business, unless if you are doing some crooked business, but every straightforward business that is to grow, you need to keep on investing. You need additional investments every now and then for you to reach your new milestones. So when there's a gap in that, then you are static, you are not growing. Before you know it, coupled with management challenges that might come with that, you are going down or something like that.
Great. Thank you very much. Now, very last question. This one question, not compound question. Yes, please.
My question is, as an individual, how far are you from reaching your success, and what do you describe as success, and when is it enough for you to say you're a successful person now and you give up and you're ready to hand over the business, whatever it is that you're doing?
I'm far from being successful. Very, very, very far. And I'm still very far from being successful. And success for me, I think, is doing something in the manner you want it done. When you see it being done the way that you want it done, then I think at that point I feel successful. So considering that I haven't yet seen Zamgoat, being done the way I want it to be done, I'm not successful yet. Maybe I will be at some point. So I'm not successful.
Great. All right, thank you very much, Paul. I think he deserves a big round of applause. And thank you very much to everybody. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for being here. We'd like to thank our sponsors. Zona, Zambia, Fortress Media for the video, Africa Trust Academy, Insizwe Brokers and Insurance, as well as Google. Thank you very much.